These ETs that started showing up after the atomic bomb drop, some people theorize that, oh, the aliens are future humans. There is truth to that. What's essentially happening is our timeline, when we dropped those atomic bombs on Japan, that signaled that we were going that path of self-destruction. Our collective consciousness made an agreement with a timeline that did screw up its Earth, right? These gray aliens, or they're humans, but they evolved into something that we would see as an alien. They're actually just humans in a future version of Earth, a future reality of Earth. Our collective consciousness made an agreement with their collective consciousness to kind of help each other out, and that they can phase and shift into our reality, take humans, use their DNA, put them back to create these hybrid beings and perpetuate their people, and in exchange they would help subvert us off this destructive path that we're on. Hello everyone, welcome back to the second episode of Remembering Forward. This is going to be a crazy one. We're only in episode 2, but this one will be kind of nuts. We will be going over the whole concept of contact with other beings from other places that are not Earth-based, interdimensional, extraterrestrial, as well as any potential history that may reflect that. And most importantly, how we are living quite literally in the times of mass disclosure, not only about the truth of all the corruption in the world that was in front of our faces anyway, but the actual nature of humanity's connection to its cosmic origins. Alright? So yes, buckle in and prepare for a wild ride, because this is going to start actually during the Second World War. Now, when the atomic bombs were dropped, Fat Man and Little Boy, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this wasn't just an explosion physically that blew stuff up and then spread radiation. These atomic bombs actually sent out ripples into space, like sort of like a pulsating energy wave that rippled through the fabric of space and time, and it alerted other beings because other beings perceived it, and we caught their attention by that act of dropping the bombs on Japan. Now, the nature of that alert or recognition was one of curiosity. They wanted to see what the hell are what are these monkeys doing? They're splitting the tiniest particles of physical reality, like atoms, making, not even utilizing it for energy, but to drop it on top of each other. What is going on? And that is around the time when all of these flying saucers, ships, and crafts were beginning to be cited more and more and more. There is an infamous clip of Muhammad Ali in an interview just saying this, and people were laughing at him.
I've been studying UFOs. Did you know there are UFOs out here flying around, unidentified objects?
This would be the place for them, Southern California.
I'm serious. They sighted a bunch over Georgia. I've seen them at night. They have real photos of them, and the government and the people just completely seem like don't talk about it. But Mr. Harold Salkin of Washington, D.C., is the head of the National UFO Bureau.
Right.
He brought me moving films. I actually have moving pictures of little saucers, of great steel objects coming into pictures that people took, and I'm just surprised that don't nobody talk more about it. Something they can...
Another great insight into the fight game.
He was saying there are UFOs flying around, and the government knows about it, and they've covered it all up, and so people have been saying this for a very long time. It's only that the stigma has been very carefully fabricated and manipulated in a way to where if anyone says they saw something or whatever, they'd be ridiculed. That's why in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, if you tried to talk about this like you were abducted, you saw beings, anything like that, you would lose your job, be ostracized from society, and that created the fear that we still kind of hold on to but are letting it go, of even talking about UFOs or aliens to begin with. After the atomic bombs were dropped and Japan surrendered, which ironically enough people don't even know, Japan didn't surrender because of the atomic bombs. That actually just made them more angry and willing to fight to the death. The only reason they surrendered was because they didn't want to be occupied by the Soviets, who were approaching their shores very quickly. And occupation under Stalin would not, like, that's it. It's better to surrender and get the support from the US rather than, because they were completely willing to fight to the death with America. Anyway, after the atomic bombs were dropped, we sent out an alert that we're doing some crazy shit, and that's when all these ships started, hovering over, flying over, and people were seeing them. That actually brings me over to right, yeah, a rancher named Mac Brazel. He came across the debris first. It was kind of like a crashed ship scenario. And the military, as soon as they caught wind of it, because he went to tell, the town, the newspapers, and all that, which there are actually surviving documents, you know. And even the military itself claimed initially that they caught a flying disc, and then immediately retracting it. Like, like these things are kind of like already in your face, and people who interacted with the material said that it was bendable, but you couldn't tear it, and all this, interesting stuff. So that just kind of summarizes the history of, because by the way, ETs have been interacting with Earth since our inception, because our conception literally stems from a direct ET encounter with the Anunnaki beings, right, who made us, because we're hybridized beings. We're not fully of Earth, but that was episode one topic. What I'm doing right now is just basically peeling back the layers because I don't want to. It gets pretty crazy because this isn't just okay. We let aliens know we're here by setting off nukes. They came here. Now what? This is like a whole interaction. So these ETs that started showing up after the atomic bomb dropped are not actually alien in the way that we are assuming. They actually, like some people theorize that, oh, the aliens are future humans. There is truth to that because the ones that most people recognize as the gray beings, right? Like the larger head, slim body, big eyes, they're actually from a parallel timeline that I trip myself up trying to explain this. Articulating it poses a challenge sometimes because you're talking parallel realities, metaphysics, and all that. We need to first establish that time is an illusion. So past, present, and future all exist within the present. The present is the infinite now moment. The day you were born, the current moment you're at, and the day you'll die, they already exist simultaneously. Even if there's infinite probable futures of how you'll die or how your life will look like, the point is that your consciousness is kind of shifting through timelines perpetually, 24/7, like nonstop, and it's so automatic you don't realize you're doing it. But point is, past, present, and future all exist in the present. So whatever happened 2,000 years ago still exists right now. It's just that our collective and individual consciousness is shifted on this current moment or this perspective of that now moment. And then we're continually shifting along the timeline, but similar like a cassette tape, how you can lay out all the frames at once and have it all in your hand. It's only when you put it on the projector or in the video slot that you'll see one frame at a time, and then it'll create the illusion of movement. So that being said, these gray aliens that showed up after the atomic bomb dropped actually came from the parallel timeline of Earth, where the humans on that parallel timeline made the similar decision of, division, separation, violence, and more importantly, engineering the love out of their lives because they were so focused on intellect that as their timeline played out, right? Because their future timeline still exists with our present, like so that's the only way that they're able to even come into this reality with their ships and their technology is because they exist simultaneously as the now moment. This is gonna completely break our perspective on time travel because there is no time travel in the like science fiction classical science fiction sense, but it's just a matter of shifting to a different reality that looks like the past, but it's all going on all at the same time. So this timeline that destroyed itself, the timeline of Earth that destroyed itself, they were very hyper focused on intellect. They were hyper focused on, you know, more technology means like you're superior, and they kept climbing up that route. But at the same time, they lost their emotions. Like they became more cold. They essentially engineered the love out of their species, right? Out of their race, to the point where they were no longer able to reproduce. That's like how extreme it got on their timeline. And because of the environmental destruction that came with all of that as well, they destroyed their environment, their Earth. They had to actually mutate themselves to adapt to their dying planet and then live underground. That's why they have the grayish skin, right? And when they weren't able to reproduce anymore, they had to resort to cloning themselves. But eventually they kept following, like pulling that timeline all across, right? They keep going along that timeline of, that direction. They realized that they weren't able to even clone themselves anymore because their DNA was no longer viable. They fucked their shit up so bad that they couldn't even clone themselves or reproduce. They had no way of perpetuating themselves. So their only solution that they were able to think of was using their advanced technology to shift to other parallel realities of Earth, so the past, where they knew that humans with viable DNA still existed. So they could use those humans, use their DNA, put them back, and create hybrid beings, beings that are half human, half gray alien. If we just back up a second, what's essentially happening is our timeline, when we dropped those atomic bombs on Japan, that signaled that we were going that path of self-destruction. So what happened was our collective consciousness made an agreement with a timeline that did screw up its Earth, right? These gray aliens, or they're humans, but they evolved into something that we would see as an alien. But they're actually just humans in a future version of Earth, a future reality of Earth. Our collective consciousness made an agreement with their society, their collective consciousness, to kind of help each other out, and that they can phase and shift into our reality, take humans, use their DNA, put them back to create these hybrid beings and perpetuate their people, and in exchange, they would help subvert us off this destructive path that we're on. Because if we continued on this path that we were on after dropping those atomic bombs on Japan, then we would have went down that same route and became gray aliens in 3,000 years or whatever, how long it would have taken us to get to that point of just being devoid of emotion. And so that's what all these abductions that happened in the 80s that I'm actually going to get into, that I actually have up on my screen right now. This is an infamous one. So this couple right here, they claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrials and they were questioned about it and all that. It all checked out, but it was such a wild, it had people flabbergasted. They didn't know, like, what are you talking about? But they agreed on that soul level to participate and assist to create these hybrid beings so that the Greys culture doesn't die out. And so what's happening is our timeline just made an agreement with another timeline and we're assisting each other so we can learn from our mistakes, right? They should have not invested so much in intellect and actually focus more on love and connectivity. And we need to do that as well. So now we're like using each other's experiences to, well, we're getting the benefit of the Grace experience because they played that out thousands of years and then they resulted in a dead end because they could no longer even perpetuate themselves, right? Love is what really binds everything together to allow it to expand infinitely for, for all time and eternity. That's just the overall gist of it. Like there's so many other parts to it that just make your brain want to explode. Like because of the fact, for example, that they engineer the emotion out of their lives, creating these hybrid beings that many of whom live among us already, by the way, and are going to be a part of the disclosure when it happens this year or the next. I kid you not. If anyone has heard about the mantis beings, the tall praying mantis beings, literally think of a praying mantis human sized, right? These beings were the ones that assisted the Greys in creating the hybridization program so that they could put emotionality back into their culture because they had no reference of how to even do that. This is why so many abduction experiences or detainment are remembered as very fearful by a lot of people that recall it, right? Because when you are in that experience of being abducted so they can take your DNA and put you back, they wipe your mem they Men in Black, like they wipe your memory because they still want you to like live your life. You're not gonna be able to live a normal life remembering vividly that kind of experience. Like it would just set you off like your destiny, like your life path. So they essentially make you forget. And however, some people they still get triggered by, for example, being afraid of the doctor's office, right? I'm gonna tell you a story. I have a very close friend of mine whose dad is in the military, and she told me that he's been in the military for like 23 years and now he's a retired veteran and he lives in his sister's garage just making guitars all day and smoking weed. Sounds fucking great. But she said that when he was in the military, how do I best put this? Well, first of all, he's always been interested in the paranormal and all that, but what's interesting is that he has this art that he's made of himself. Like it's crazy. Like he literally made art of himself. This ex-veteran. I'm gonna ask her for permission if I can put it on the screen because she sent me the photos. of himself on a bed with aliens surrounding him. And he just said he drew it out of inspiration, like it just came to him. On top of that, he's deathly afraid of the dentist's office. Why would a grown man, only after leaving the military, right, not in the beginning of his life as a kid, start becoming afraid of the dentist's office, right? Like being in a chair and like a light fucking right in front of your face. To me, I mean, obviously it's jumping to conclusions, but he was probably a part of the hybridization program that abducted him, took his DNA and put him back, and now he's like sitting with it like lingering in his psyche somewhere that comes up randomly, like being afraid of the dentist's office. Now, of course, there's always going to be the type of person which is totally valid of being like overly skeptical, like I don't buy it, right? But the thing is, this is a narrative that has been captured and taken control of in order to keep it a secret, basically. Like, if you just look at even if it's anecdotal evidence, it's still valid. If it's someone else's experience, it's still valid. You have people genuinely, it's like, out of courage, saying something that they know, like, other people are not gonna like, out of courage, saying their own experience. Like, yeah, we were abducted by beings from another place. I know it sounds crazy, but that's simply what we experience, and we're sharing it. Similarly to that, I'll go back to the screen here. There's a plethora of cases. My favorite is the Zimbabwe. This one I just learned about recently, the Westel UFO incident, and it always involves, cover-ups, like Men in Black literally coming by and saying nothing happened here. And you got to remember, like, the media is controlled by people with influence, people with money, people that have ulterior motives. So you can't always trust mainstream media, which is why this day and age of decentralized open source information from Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, any social media platform, even YouTube included, is all fantastic because nothing can be really censored anymore. There's going to be a lot of disinformation and BS as well, but you just have to use your inner discernment to decide, okay, what sounds like maybe it could be true. Like, you have to really like do the filtering yourself, but there's not as much censoring as there has been in the past, where they go to the media press, the newspaper press, the Gazette, and say, you're not going to talk about this. This is off topic. Whether it's APAC controlling America or the United States being in recovery of crafts and bodies that come from another world. Next, we have the infamous case of Bob Lazar, right? Like, if you see any interviews with Bob Lazar, his claims are always consistent since the 1980s, and he even talked about Area 51 before the government confirmed its existence in 2013 under the Obama administration. He was talking about Area 51 the entire time, claiming that there's a specific base called S4, and he was brought in just as he wasn't even aware of it until he saw the documents, and he's like, what the hell is this talking about? And then when he was shown the craft, or shown the technology that he was responsible for reverse engineering, he couldn't, but like, he's like, what is it? Because it was basically, it was like a half sphere metal object that, when turned on, or when it had the right fuel in it, which is element 115, it could create a gravitational repulsion effect, which should be not really doable with our technology, because how do you, like, that's not something that we're able publicly in the scientific database able to do. So he was essentially interacting with technology that was off grid, off the books. I highly recommend that you look more into his case. He has a documentary actually coming out in like next week or something, that everyone should check out and go watch. And then, of course, here we have the UFO incident in Zimbabwe. Now, this is very interesting because it involved, well, the other one involved like 200 school children. This one involved 60. But the thing is, they had an intimate, close encounter where the ship landed and a being came out and was communicating with them through thoughts, through telepathy. Now, what's interesting is that all of these children, when they were interviewed individually, one at a time, by different like a psychiatrist that came in, they were all just stone cold face, like explaining, oh yeah, and then this happened and this happened, the ship landed, and then whatever, whatever. And what's even more interesting, as you can see here, I gotta watch this for later, but what's interesting is that they've all grown up and they're sticking to the stories. They're saying, yeah, we understand that people think we're, making a crazy claim, but this is just something that we experience. They're simply saying, I don't know what to tell you. This is something that we experience. And then next we have the infamous Phoenix Lights example, where thousands of people that saw crafts hovering over Arizona. And then even the mayor said, yeah, like something was strange, like something strange had happened. We don't we have no explanation from it. Next, we have, more infamously, the Tic Tac 2004 incident with Commander David Fravor, who is a military commander. This dude essentially said that he saw a Tic Tac hovering back and forth along the water. He went down to check it out, and then it started like going around it, and he started like parallel. You watch. I would recommend that you really look into the testimony given by him, and because he describes in detail how it acted, and then at the very end, as soon as he was gonna like impact into it, it literally just blinked within a blink of an eye, just disappeared. So the point is, the skepticism is totally necessary, valid, and warranted, but at some point, we really gotta take a look and just wonder, are we being told the whole truth? Is reality, is the nature of being visited by other beings as crazy as we were made to think it is? Anyone that goes stargazing out, in the middle of the night, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m., and just ponders among the vast array of stars, there's going to be a knowingness within you that says a lot of stuff happening out there that I'm just not able to perceive at this moment. So these visitors have been here for a very long time, prior to us even being here. It's just that our awareness in this context is that of an ant. Like, we're not able to really perceive what's happening because of the way that we're focused in physical reality. When we expand our consciousness, when we increase our frequency, expand outward, we'll be able to see more things that were therefore invisible to us previously. So fast forwarding to today, there have been, and I've watched all three of these, the congressional hearings on UAP and ETs, with individuals testifying such as David Grush. Where is he at? My boy right here, David Grush. And just different insiders in the military, Air Force, Pentagon, intelligence, just, all over. Essentially all stating that there are objects that are flying around that they can't even identify. That's like the base claim, of course. But then David Fravor, who has more inside knowledge, he's claiming that not only has the United States government and defense contractors like Raytheon and Lockheed and all these other entities have not only been retrieving crafts, but they've been shooting them down. They figured out a way to harness EMP energy and fucking beam that shit and target these crafts to, like, essentially they summon them. They found a way to summon them, and then once they show up, they shoot them down, retrieve the technology, and at times the bodies as well, to figure out how it works and make weapons out of it. That is the state. That is the state that our military is in right now, or the rogue part of the military that has no oversight. That's just siphoning money to do all this crazy shit and not even tell anybody about it, just because they want the edge of having like sci-fi level types of technology and weaponry specifically. So anyone that's wondering why they just haven't landed in the White House yet, you can't blame the aliens for not landing on the White House and making open contact with us with how we're acting right now. We weren't even aware. I'm not speaking for myself, but I mean collectively. Collectively, the country was not even aware of America, that our own government is being ran by people that sell and buy children and take them out to islands, and you already know with the whole Epstein class. So we weren't even aware of the people that we're electing into our leadership, and we're not even aware of the people that are supposed to be protecting us, shooting down these visitors, killing them, and taking their crafts, right? So they can't necessarily land in a situation like that because we're so unaware of what's even going on. Because we're so filled with fear, with doubts, and with negative beliefs, with propaganda, with brainwashing, that it would be not conducive to anyone's benefit if they just landed in the White House, because we have this fairy tale notion about how things are really ran in America. With, oh, we have three branches of the government: legislative, executive, and judicial branch, and checks and balances. But no, there's literally levels above the federal government that kind of pull all the strings and operate outside of the law. They can end anyone's life, they can unalive anyone they want, and they can do stuff like this. Even though I don't know which organizations are connected with who, and if it's just rogue military that have taken it upon themselves, or I'm not sure of the nature of all that, but there are people operating outside of the bounds of the Constitution and government laws, which is crazy. So yeah, you can see here David Grush, he had top secret clearance and he worked for the Pentagon for nearly 2 decades. He stated that remains of pilots were recovered from these crash sites. That is insane. We have bodies of alien visitors. But the thing is, humanity right now is being, how do you say, we're essentially being held hostage by ourselves. And that's why the aliens can't make contact yet, because we have to wake up from that and say, wait a minute. We have to have that Bug's Life moment, if you remember in the film, where they realized that they outnumber the grasshoppers 100 to 1, right? So why were they letting the grasshoppers take half their food when they could just say no? We need to be in that moment and in that state of just saying we don't consent to this, because now we're becoming aware of the situation of what's really going on. So now we have the ability to make a more clear decision of what we prefer. We want full transparency, full disclosure, full accountability. Anyone that's violating like little kids like need to be locked up forever. That sort of thing. Like we need to really take a stand and choose what we prefer, because a lot of these things were just outside of our awareness for so long. Because I mean, they poisoned the food, they propagandized the media, they indoctrinated the K through 12 system. Like so, little kids are gonna think in a certain like in a box kind of way. We need to unlearn everything that we've been learned, as the great Yoda has once said.
No. We'll never get it out now.
So certain are you? Always with you it cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No, no different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
You must learn what you have learned. That's what we have to do. Everything we were taught, throw it out the window. Yeah, I'll wrap it up with just some of the more recent events. So you had the president of the United States, Donald Trump, that said just a few weeks ago that all information on extraterrestrials and UFOs and UAP and that whole subject will be released over whatever given period of time. And then just recently, like last week, aliens.gov and alien.gov were registered. Those domains were registered. And now like the White House Twitter account is posting like a bunch of weird cryptic shit. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything or the war in Iran or whatever. But and the war in Iran is tied into all of this, by the way. There's like some prophetic shit going down right now where it's gonna end in humanity waking up into something truly magnificent. But we have to get through this dark period of realizing how negative shit has been before we can really transform it into the light and accelerate unlike anything we can ever even imagine at this current moment. Because we're gonna be in a Star Trek reality within a couple generations. Like this is insane. If you have made it this far into the episode, I deeply appreciate your presence, your viewership, and there's a lot I didn't really cover or get into this episode. So because I wanted to keep it brief and concise and just kind of open you up into the ideas of what potentially is really going on. As always, do your own research. Everything I tell you should be something for you to look into on your own. Don't believe anything I say willy-nilly, fly by the seat of your pants. You still want to have your own discernment and you still want to have your own like opinion. Like do a bit of digging and really just open your mind to what I'm saying, because there's so many angles that I could have taken this. So like that's why I started this podcast, so I can really express like man, I'm gonna be getting into the like everything. It's a crazy reality that we've spawned into here. Okay, like this isn't this this is not the world that you thought it was, because there are things that you're gonna learn eventually, that we're all gonna learn, that are gonna blow our minds into individual components of like into nothing. That's how mind blowing this is. And I mean, as always, I could just not be more grateful to be alive in this period than anything else, all else considered, because this is a very exciting place to be right now. Like being a human on Earth right now is so exciting. That's why we all chose to come here. All 8 billion people truly did choose to come here, many of which, including myself, came for the particular purpose of watching this transformation occur as human society on Earth. This is going to be insane. The best thing you can do for yourself is live in love, know yourself, act on your passion, act on your excitement, do the things that excite you, process your trauma that if you're harboring any fear-based beliefs about yourself, any negative self-concept, really work on yourself, love yourself. That's really the point of this entire process. That's the whole point of having a human experience, is to experience the process of change and growth and, really having the gall to believe that you're not loved and then waking up into the fact that I am love, right? It's a beautiful experience. It can be a very cherishing experience that gets you to have a much deeper appreciation for the creation that we all are co-creating and reside within and are itself. Because as I'm going to get into next episodes, the whole concept of what God is, what your inner divinity is, and who you actually are as a spirit being, as a soul that chose to focus itself down into a human body, right? A portion of itself down into a human physical mind, a human body, to experience itself in this magnificent reality that we're in with millions and billions of other beings on that same path that you can interact and mingle with and just rediscover yourself and have fun and play and enjoy, because that's the purpose of it all, is to just be and to enjoy and to love. That's the whole point. There's no other meaning of life beside that, because the meaning of life itself is fundamentally neutral. It's meaningless. We are the ones that are able to create that meaning and give it meaning by acting on things that give us the most excitement and stuff like that. But outside of that, life has no meaning. We're the ones that are designed to give it meaning because we are the creators of our reality. Now, I unfortunately do have to go. I have a very busy schedule, but please tune in to the next episode. Follow all the socials down below. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, X, Threads. Gonna look to go on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all that. So follow all my links, follow all my socials, and I do hope to see you around. Please leave any comments, any feedback you have. Subscribe. Love you. Thank you so much. Till next time.